All right, we're live now. So, thank you all for joining into our Bright Talk session on how we can help our customers from ransomware. Today, we'll be talking about how Nutanix and HYCU can basically help not just Nutanix-led data centers, but also non-Nutanix-led workloads to seamlessly not just backup, but also protect your infrastructure from a ransomware attack. My name is Shivaraja. I'm the technical solutions architect at Haiku, and with me, I have Harsh Kapoor, who's from Nutanix. He's one of the Nutanix senior sales engineers, and we also have Casey from Haiku, who's one of our senior account executives. So, with that being said, let me just get started with our presentation. Now, I really don't have to give you an introduction of the prevalence of ransomware attacks, right? I mean, at this point, I'd say like most of you on the call know what a ransomware attack is and how dangerous these attacks can be, right? I mean, the amount of attacks that we've been seeing is pretty much on the rise, right? And there is basically no restriction with regards to what vertical gets hit by a ransomware attack. I mean, healthcare, financial sector, education, political parties. Like you basically have no ends or no limits of which organization can get attacked. And as a matter of fact, in this day and age, it's not about whether your organization will be impacted by a ransomware attack or not. It's simply a question of when your organization is going to be impacted by a ransomware attack, and that's how prevalent these things have become. Uh, so the with that being said, like if an organization is susceptible to the ransomware attack, the obvious next question is how do you basically go about protecting your infrastructure and protecting your important assets from a ransomware attack, and how do you efficiently go about recovering your organization from from an unforeseen ransomware attack. And we actually have more than a couple of success stories where we have where we have helped customers to recover from such an attack, right? Now, one of the examples, obviously, I cannot share the name of that customer, but I can definitely give you the overview of what exactly happened there. So, this specific customer was basically impacted by a ransomware attack during the weekend, and the rate of encryption was like pretty slow and steady. And by the time the customer basically reached or their administrators started to access their system, they realized that their infrastructure, not just their primary infrastructure, not just their production workloads, but also their backups were also encrypted because their backups were basically residing on uh, you know uh, unsecured SMB shares, right? They were basically open to public access. And in addition to that, all of the customers' Windows operating systems were basically locked, and the only thing that was not locked was basically their Nutanix subsystem and their Haiku backup controller. Now, the reason why the Haiku backup controller was not encrypted is because it's a totally locked, uh, a Linux-based operating system, and the customers were basically able to just access the front-end UI of our Haiku backup and recovery solution. And what they basically did was they actually called our customer service, and with the help of Haiku and Nutanix's secure integration, we were basically able to help this customer recover their entire infrastructure with the help of Nutanix's secure snapshots and Haiku's secured user interface, right? So that's exactly how we were able to bring this customer back online. And we have, many other, recommended practices on how you can basically secure not just your integration between your Haiku and your Nutanix workload or Nutanix storage or Nutanix subsystem, but also basically have the entire backup secured from such a ransomware attack, so that in case a ransomware attack happens, your backups will still be secure, and the assurance of your backups helping you to recover from such an attack is extremely high, right? So, with that being said, let me just give you an introduction of who we are. So, our company is based out of Boston, although we do have a global presence. As a matter of fact, we also have offices in Chicago and Austin. We are a pretty young company. We actually have approximately 300 plus employees worldwide. And our heritage or our DNA is, our background basically comes from data protection. We have been building backup and recovery solutions even before we came up with this company. We were actually, building data protection solutions for several blue chip companies like EMC and HP, and then we basically decided to come up with our own backup and recovery and data protection solution, and that is how HYCU was born. And we are a true multi-cloud data protection solution, meaning that we not only have the ability to protect next-gen platforms like Nutanix, but we also have the ability to support workloads on Google Cloud, Azure, and AWS. And we have a steady, customer base, which is basically spread across the globe. We have sold our solutions in more than 75 countries, and we have more than 2,700 customers, and that number is steadily growing. Now, with that introduction in hand, let me just give you a high level overview of what we truly provide. So, HYCU, or otherwise known as HYCU Protege, basically is a multi cloud data protection solution. So, it really doesn't matter what you're running. It could be Nutanix, it could be VMware, coupled with a bunch of physical servers, or if you have any involvement in your public cloud, could be all of your three major hypervisors, AWS, Google Cloud, or Azure, or even if you're running O365. We can actually provide you, a seamless data protection solution that actually provides you a purpose-built data protection migration and DR solution that is purpose-built for every platform. And in addition to that, we also have this ability to seamlessly move these workloads between your on-prem to your public cloud infrastructure with absolutely zero agents. And one of the best things, and the one that we will be focused in this specific session, is about how we can provide you an air-gapped and immutable backup strategy, especially for a Nutanix-led data center, or even for a non-Nutanix environment where you can basically make use of Nutanix mines or Nutanix objects with HYCU as a backup solution, and you can basically protect your entire on-prem infrastructure with air-gapped and immutable backups. So, having that said, why is HYCU relevant in the market today, right? I mean, what exactly makes HYCU so special? So, I'm basically taking an example of a typical data center that has, a bunch of Nutanix workloads, maybe, a little bit of non-Nutanix workloads, maybe an ESX cluster running on a non-Nutanix, soon to be migrated to a Nutanix platform with some edge cases of physical servers. Let's say you also have Nutanix files hosting all of the NAS, CIFS, or NFS shares. And if you basically wanted to go with a traditional backup vendor, you would basically need a dedicated backup virtual machine that basically would discover all of your clusters, and then you would have to deploy agents. I'm not saying you have to deploy agents on every VM, but you definitely have to deploy agents on physical servers, or if you're trying to back up any specific applications, then you would have to deploy those agents. And on top of it, you need to design proxy servers that has to communicate with each cluster, or otherwise known as data movers. And then you need to deploy a separate repository server that would basically translate the underlying storage to store all of the backups. And then if you wanted to move those backups to the cloud, then you would need a separate cloud proxy server. And on top of it, if you're basically looking to manage multiple backup servers, and have additional capabilities, then you need to license it for something known as an enterprise server. And on top of it, if you need to have if you're in need of specific backup reports, then you need to have a separate a reporting server. So, licensing and cost apart, I mean, the amount of time it would take for you to not just deploy but maintain this infrastructure is going to be extremely tough, especially when you're trying to do an upgrade of your entire backup infrastructure. Now, if you have HYCU, on the other hand, all of these capabilities are basically provided to you from one single virtual appliance that has the ability to discover all of your Nutanix and non-Nutanix workloads and do seamless backups to whatever backup targets that you want to. Now, in this case, it's obviously going to be Nutanix objects, and we also have the ability to tier those backups to any of your public cloud vendor of your choice, right? So, speaking of our customers, we have a wide variety of customers in several verticals. I mean, we have Boston University, MLB, and these customers have basically chosen our solution for one simple reason. I mean, our solution is extremely simple and easy to use. the same time, we are enterprise ready, and our customer service, right? So one of the cool things about Haiku is our NPS score, otherwise known as Net Promoter Score, and we actually have the highest score of any backup vendor, which is 91 plus. This is because it's not just about the kind of customer service we provide; it's about the entire engagement from start to finish. I mean, it basically starts with the very first call of how we engage with the customer, then with the entire demonstration of our product, and the proof of concept, and the entire post-sales engagement plus customer support. So that is exactly how we evaluate ourselves when it comes to providing our service, and that is exactly why our solution and our NPS score is basically the highest of any other backup vendor in the market today. So I think I've provided a very high level overview of who we are and what we do and what we offer. I'm going to pass the ball to my good friend Harsh. He would be talking about how Nutanix objects and Nutanix can basically provide you that layer of security when it comes to protecting your infrastructure against ransomware. So over to you, Harsh.
Thanks, Shiva. So you guys heard, from Shiva how Haiku can simplify your backups. The differences between your traditional backup windows before Haiku and after Haiku. Now, let me just go over how Nutanix simplifies your data center. Just a bit of architecture, and obviously, going over the layers of security that we have incorporated in our architecture as well. So Nutanix at core, what it does is it converges compute and storage into x86 hardware, thereby eliminating the need for different silos, right? Networking, compute, storage, and management. And so it's all integrated into one solution. It's a software-defined solution that can be run on all major hardware vendors out there. And so when it comes to security, our biggest strength is in updating our software, and not just our own software, Nutanix core software, but also being able to update the hardware uh, on which Nutanix is running, along with the firmwares, right? So customers with the Nutanix solution running on their hardware, they can update all these firmwares and hypervisors, OS, patches with just a couple of clicks. And they can do these upgrades middle of the day. They don't have to plan maintenance windows or after hours or on weekends. And just to go over, so obviously the brains of Nutanix, or the secret sauce, is our controller virtual machines. So essentially, at our core HCI offering, we have a virtual machine. So it's a storage controller that we have virtualized it, and obviously it's running secure Linux. So one of the the mindset of Nutanix offerings, in all of its products, since its inception, was security was has always been built in and not like bolt on approach. So from day one, we have kept in mind security and designed all our products. And some of our early customers, three-letter agencies of the government, obviously pushed us to move with this approach. We also have a offering called microsegmentation, like Flow, and you can restrict your virtual machines to different network segments. So essentially, if one virtual machine gets compromised or infected, with Flow being enabled, with microsegmentation being enabled, you can limit the spread of the infection with Flow. Obviously, you can encrypt the data at rest and in transit. So you can encrypt your data using hardware-based encryption, but we also have software-based encryption that eliminates the need to have a third-party key management server. So even the keys with the software-based encryption are residing and managed by Nutanix Fabric. And finally, the objects, right? So you can leverage Nutanix objects is essentially it's S3 compatible, worm enable object solution, and you can use for backups with Haiku as well. So moving on, let's have a look, how Haiku and Nutanix can be leveraged with our objects solution. So Nutanix objects with Haiku provides a simple, cost-effective, robust, and secure data protection solution. Haiku paired with Nutanix objects can help you secure your backups, and through three simple techniques. The first one is immutable backups. So the combined solution can deliver backups to worm-enabled S3 objects storage with no performance penalty. Second one would be isolated backups, which delivers network segmentation between your desired sources or backup targets. Therefore, it's air gap from every level. Third is inhibited access, so which delivers robust role-based access, multi-tenancy, end-to-end encryption for your data security platform. And this is just an architecture how you can leverage Nutanix and Haiku, in your environment. So you have a data center where you have running Nutanix for your primary workloads, and you have a Nutanix objects cluster which has Haiku controller running on it. So that could be your secondary backups, right? And obviously it's air gap the network, and you can also use Haiku controller to have a tertiary or third backup, in a public cloud provider as well. So on a high level, that's how Nutanix and Haiku, can be leveraged together. And obviously, if you have a secondary data center, oh, sorry about that. If you have a secondary data center, you can have replication going between the two objects cluster in the two data centers. So when it comes to ransomware, there's no single action software solution or control that can completely safeguard your organization. Much like other cyber threats, the best solution is a multi-layered approach, which we call defense in depth strategy. So let's have a look how Nutanix and Haiku can prevent and detect ransomware in your environment. So the first strategy should be prevention. Stopping an attack before the damage can occur is always the best strategy. Now, there isn't anything magical about ransomware. It all starts with common attack vectors such as phishing, so clicking on weird links in an email, malicious web pages, known software bugs by means of not patching those in a timely fashion, right? And so when you think about best practices, the list includes some of the standard cybersecurity best practices, like changing your default passwords, requiring a secondary token when logging every time, through multi-factor authentication, leveraging network segmentation, so that in case ransomware, breaches, you can limit the spread. It doesn't spread very far. You can leverage worm-based storage for backups, obviously along with Haiku and Nutanix objects, and encryption, right? Encryption at rest, encryption in transit, and not only your primary data but also your backups. Uh, and finally, patching, like updating your operating system, your hypervisors, your firmwares, regularly. Now, the second strategy should be detection, because no prevention is 100% secure. We have to assume something is going to get in, and we have to assume that something is going to get in. And so it's if we detect early, we can limit the blast radius, right? And there are early warning signs for ransomware, like increase network activity, increase IO activity, the way the certain files are getting updated, right? And so there are tools out there that can detect these things. Tools like and the best practice is to leverage these tools, to make sure like you're using these tools out there. So tools like intrusion detection prevention, IDS, IPS, to identify spurious network activity. Tools like SIEM, Splunk, to collect logs from different components and chew on those logs, and to see trends that could reflect ransomware activity. Third is recovery, the third strategy, the last strategy, but definitely uh, probably the most important one, because we have to assume, like, ransom is gonna you're gonna get compromised. Like, yes, we can prevent to a certain extent. Uh, we can detect early, but the question comes, like, what after that, like, how do we recover from that when that's going to happen? So ransom is a standard disaster, more likely than your common disasters that people prepare for, like floods, fire, earthquakes, and chances are you're going to be impacted by ransomware, more likely than some of these common natural disasters out there. And so, to stress on the impact, loss of access of data by ransomware means your applications can't run. So, um, your applications can't run. So, your it's a lot of time and value is lost when your businesses, when your company can't operate. And some of these are some of the obvious impacts, but some of the not so obvious impacts are damage to reputation, which is huge, right? And so when it comes to best practices, um, for ransomware recovery, think about, like, how you would recover, or some of the best practices for your business continuity and disaster recovery, right? So having multiple snapshots, replicated to multiple sites, having the standard 3-2-1 backup rule, like, 3 copies on 2 media types, one offsite location. But the most important best practice from a recovery standpoint, I would say, is uh, you know having the ability to backup, validate the backup, and the recovery plan, right? So you might have heard that backups are easy, but recovery is hard, and it's true in this case. And that's why, like, Haiku really shines. Like, you are able to recover your data, after it's being impacted by ransomware. So just to summarize, how Nutanix and Haiku, can help you with the ransomware events. So, role-based access, right, with identity access management, enabling multi-factor authentication. You can leverage Nutanix's micro-segmentation offering, which is called Flow, so that when the breach does occur, the blast radius is limited. I talked about the one-click patches and updates. So you can perform these upgrades in the middle of the day, right? And you can be done within an hour, because our updates and patches, when you start the upgrade process, the entire upgrade process is orchestrated by Nutanix. So there's no manual intervention required when you start the upgrade process. You can leverage Nutanix objects, worm capabilities for backups, and obviously encryption at rest and in transit. When it comes to detection, again, with a Flow offering, you can have a service insertion, right? So all the switches, uh, all the switches configuration can be integrated with Nutanix solution as well. With our machine learning capabilities, which is called XPlay, you can detect anomalies and automate. You can also go through policy hit logs and event logs with our microsegmentation offering Flow, and user analytics as well. And Shiva, I'm just gonna pass it
Sure.
on to you for the recovery.
Absolutely, Harsh. So when it comes to recovery, right? I mean, thank you, Harsh. I mean, there are so many points that I could actually talk about, right? I mean, especially when it comes to our role-based access control, multi-factor authentication. Nutanix and Haiku actually have the ability to provide you the same level of capabilities on your production and also in your backup infrastructure. But to Harsh's point, one of the most important things that he specified was the importance of recovery, right? I mean, regardless of how hard and how secure your environment is, you always need to uh, you know uh, consider the possibility of these security walls being broken. And if that happens, if your production infrastructure gets compromised by a ransomware attack, recovery is the only option, right? And that is exactly where Nutanix and HYCU can shine together, because we basically make use of Nutanix's immutable snapshots. And the best part here is when HYCU triggers these Nutanix snapshots, making use of Nutanix's V3 REST APIs. All of these snapshots are basically hidden from the end user, meaning that these snapshots are not accessible from your typical Prism interface. And snapshots, in by definition, especially when it comes to Nutanix's redirect on write snapshots, they're immutable, right? Meaning that any of that data that has been captured prior to that ransomware attack is still secure, and HYCU can make use of those snapshots to recover your entire infrastructure. That is number one. And to be fair, we've basically helped most of our customers by simply making use of these immutable Nutanix snapshots, right? So that's number one. Number two is by making use of Nutanix's object worm capability, HYCU basically has its own proprietary write capabilities to object-based storage, where we can actually do high-performance backups to an object-based Nutanix worm, worm-based Nutanix objects, where we can basically offer you high security, air gap backups with backup immutability, and you don't have to compromise on performance at all. So when it comes to having these backups with assured immutability, the recovery can be guaranteed from HYCU as well. So you not only have the advantage of making use of snapshots, but you also have the ability to make use of your Nutanix objects with HYCU to recover your backups that are present offsite. So that is the best part here. We can basically make use of your production or even your secondary infrastructure to basically recover your infrastructure from any form of a ransomware or a malware attack. Back to
Thanks,
you.
Shiva. And just to build on that, obviously you have Nutanix's core HCI offering, but along with that, you can also leverage Nutanix's file analytics solution. So um, it is a native analytics solution which gives deeper insights into and greater visibility into what users and how users are accessing files, and it can help you detect, analyze, and prevent ransomware events through its four main capabilities. First is data about data. So this gives like administrators visibility into who has access to what data, all the data a single user has access to, and whether that data is dormant or active. Right. Second is audit trails. So this gives audit trails to track file access over time. You can search and filter who has access which files, identify every change that has been made to a file and by which user. Third is anomaly detection. So you can define and detect anomalies in access behavior to identify potential threats and risk. You can configure and receive email alerts when anomalies have been detected. And finally, we recently added the ransomware protection or ransomware intelligence. So when you enable ransomware protection in files analytics, a list of known ransomware and file extensions are added to a blocking list. So now, whenever a client or a user tries to create or rename a file which is in that blocking list, that operation will be blocked. Um, and you can also add your own extensions to that list as well. And we keep on updating that blocking list as well. And lastly, just a bit more about our objects offering. So Nutanix Objects is a software-defined object storage solution. It is let me just go through this. It is designed with an S3 compatible REST API interface to handle data from ranging from terabytes to petabytes of unstructured data. It is designed for backups, long-term retention or archiving, cross-region DevOps teams, worm compliant policies, and it is deployed and managed as a part of Nutanix storage distributed storage fabric. So it eliminates the need to have additional storage silos, just in case with Nutanix files as well. It integrates with HYCU's backup offering, and you can leverage HYCU and objects to prevent and detect ransomware. And with that,
Sure.
let me
Uh,
pass on to Shiva.
yeah. Thank you, Harsh. Yeah. All right. So, thank you very much for that overview on Nutanix. So, I would like to summarize with how a haiku can basically help you, protect your typical Nutanix and a non-Nutanix led data center based on the kind of information that we have provided you, right? So, if you take a Nutanix led data center, I'm basically talking about the whole shebang here. I mean, I'm talking about your AHV or even ESX running on your Nutanix uh, clusters. I'm talking about all of your VMs with volume groups, and these volume groups can be iSCSI LUNs or they can be independently hosted volume groups for Nutanix Carbon. It doesn't matter. It's totally up to the customer. And I'm also talking about all kinds of applications like Microsoft SQL or Exchange or Oracle, MySQL, right? And I'm also referring to Nutanix Files environment as well, where you have customers hosting their SMB or NFS shares, right? So what can Haiku and Nutanix objects can provide together? And in this case, we actually have the ability to provide a full-fledged, air gap backup ability, meaning that we can provide you multi-factor authentication within your Haiku backup infrastructure and within your Nutanix storage subsystem. We can also provide you a full-fledged multi-tenancy capability for your backups, where only the respective set of users can access their own set of backups, be it with regards to their applications, VMs, or their file shares hosted on Nutanix files. And we also have the ability to encrypt your backups from source to destination to prevent unauthorized access. We also have the ability to segment the network within Haiku backup infrastructure and also with Nutanix Flow. And once all of your backups are guaranteed to be isolated into a isolated from your production environment, we also have the ability to preserve the integrity of your backups by making them or writing those backups on worm-enabled object storage within the Nutanix objects, right? So this basically ensures that your backups are not just isolated or air-gapped, but also have the ability to be totally, immutable, even if the access or even if those security walls are broken, right? And we also have the ability to tier these backups to any secondary or tertiary storage that you want to. Could be tapes or could be unused backup storage, or it could also be your public cloud, your desired public cloud vendor, AWS S3, Azure Blob, or Google Cloud Object Storage, right? So that is how you know foolproof our solution is, especially when it comes to protecting your Nutanix-led data center with Haiku and Nutanix Mine. Now, in addition to that, we also have non-Nutanix data centers into account as well, right? If you're talking about protecting your VMware infrastructure on a non-Nutanix infrastructure, if you're talking about protecting your physical servers, and these physical servers could be hosting legacy applications or it could be a simple file servers, we could still make use of Haiku and Nutanix objects to provide you that same level of full-fledged air-gapped backups and backup immutability, right? Just like the way you would protect your Nutanix data center. And that is the true value add of Nutanix objects and Haiku, not just to provide you a full-fledged protection for your Nutanix data center, but also for your non-Nutanix components, probably within your Nutanix data center or within your separate data center that doesn't have any Nutanix workloads. So, having that said, the one thing that I'd like to point out is introduce you uh, to our separate effort known as the ransomware recovery readiness score. We basically help you to to evaluate how well is your organization prepared when a ransomware attack happens within your organization, right? How well is your IT prepared to recover quickly from that specific attack? Now, we've basically noticed that more than 90% of our customers are unprepared for such an attack because I mean I wouldn't Harsh actually put that very well, right? A ransomware attack should be considered as a typical disaster, a natural disaster, a flood, or a fire, um, and and it's surprising to see that a lot of customers out there are seriously unprepared uh, when such an attack happens. And I'm not surprised, right? I mean, it really takes a lot of forethought and understanding of how an organization needs to be protected, right? So what we have introduced here is we've basically introduced a totally public free, a totally free of cost service that is accessible by general public. It's the www.getscore.org. And this basically shouldn't, it's basically a survey and shouldn't take more than 10 minutes to complete the questionnaire. And the best part here is you can, if you want to do, you can stay completely anonymous. And after 10 minutes, once you have completed the survey, we can actually display instant test results. It would be it's almost similar to your FICO score, right? We basically try to evaluate based on the inputs that you inputted. We try to provide you a kind of a score on how well your infrastructure is protected, and we basically give you basic pointers on how you can go about protecting your infrastructure. And again, as I mentioned before, you don't have to share your contact information. It's 100% free of cost, and the results displayed are instantaneous, meaning that you don't even have to provide your email address or anything like that. So please, please, please check us out at getscore.org, right? And in addition to that, if you are interested in our solution, if you'd like to know more about our products, you can always go to our Nutanix's test drive, where we can basically offer you a free evaluation of our solution with Nutanix infrastructure. You can also check us out at tryhaiku.com, where you can, if you're interested in knowing how our backup and recovery solution works, you can definitely download our solution for trial, and you can check us out. And you can check our solution out. And if you have any further questions, and if you'd like, any further answers about this session, or if you have any questions about our product, please email us at info@haiku.com. Right. So with that being said, I'm almost done with my content and my presentation. Any final parting words, Harsh, from your end?
No, thank you for that, and thank you for everyone who joined today. Hopefully, the session today was educational, right?
Absolutely. Thank you, Harsh, for joining us, and thank you all for joining us in this presentation. Obviously, the session will be recorded and will be forwarded to you as well. Now, before I go ahead and disconnect the session, I just wanted to see if there are any questions. I know the session was dedicated for 45 minutes, or planned for 45 minutes. So I'm just going to see if there are any questions. I don't see any questions in the question section. I'm just going to double check on the chat. I don't see anything either. And under announcements. So yeah, so I don't see any questions on the chat or under the Q&A section. So yep. Okay, so I think it's time for us to end the session. Thank you.
Thank you.